I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. This Saturday, the 25th of May, the Coalition for Clean and Fair Elections, better known as Bersih, will convene a national congress featuring civil society leaders, youth activists and student groups, all to deliberate on strategies to revitalise the reform agenda and agitate for real change. So joining us on the show today to tell us more about the upcoming Congress, I have Muhammad Faisal Abdul Aziz, from Chairperson of Bersih, and Aira Azhari, who is a committee member of Bersih. She's also Senior Manager and Senior Manager of Advocacy and Events at IDEAS Malaysia. Both of you, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with me. Curious to know more about the Congress. Faisal, maybe you can tell us why Bersih is organising this Congress now.
All right. First of all, thank you for having us to share some lights on this upcoming Bersih Congress. Okay, briefly, Bersih Congress primarily is organised to regroup all the activists, the democratic actors, civil society organisations, and people or the mass public to resuscitate the discussion on the reform. Why? Because there is a concern, post-COVID effect, perhaps political fatigue, loss of hope of the reform agenda bring forward by this current Madani government. There is a concern that the momentum from the public or from the people to push for reform is receding. Okay. So that's the reason why we put forward this new initiative. We have this Bersih Congress to resuscitate the discussion and to re-energize the energy from the people to push forward the reform agenda. Okay, so
you want to gather people, get them excited about the reform agenda again. But what are you hoping will come out from the Congress, Aira?
Yeah, so I mean, for those who may be not so familiar on Bersih structure, so Bersih has Bersih, the committee is the sort of the ones that works on Bersih full time, right? And there's a set of endorsing NGOs that make up the Bersih family, I would say. And we are taking this opportunity during this Congress to also reconnect actually with the endorsing NGOs and try to understand, you know, what their aspirations are and how they think that it's best to push for these aspirations. So I think what probably people don't realize in civil society, there are different groups working on different issues and they use different methods to push and advocate for those issues that they care so much about. So I think the opportunity I think that this Congress has is to gather all these different voices and see if we can come to a common understanding on, firstly, what the priorities should be, you know, maybe up to the next general election, and how we can keep pressure on the government. Right. So for me, I think I would like to see this sort of coming together of aspirations of and revitalize that sort of excitement, I think, that people have.
So also, it's not just about the reform agenda, it's also kind of checking in with the civil society space, seeing where the future lies for civil society in Malaysia. I want to come to that because I find that a fascinating conversation. But I want to talk about the reform agenda first. Now, Faisal, you have been in the news saying that you feel like the reform agenda has stalled, the momentum is very slow, the pace is very slow, and you're going to be delivering a speech or a keynote on the your assessment of the reform agenda. I want to know what are the key areas. Maybe you could give us a bit of a teaser for your speech tomorrow. What are the key areas where you feel reform agenda has stalled in your assessment?
All right. Of course, when we talk about electoral reform, it is our core business. I mean, for Bersih, and I don't think only Bersih but also public at large. We are quite disappointed with the slow progress of the electoral reform, the slow phase of the electoral reform committed by this current government. Even they don't have any plan, in terms of reform, priority of the reform that they want. And just recently, if I may share as well, just last month, I could say the government broke their promises twice when they appoint member of election commission, second time without going through parliament, whereas in fact, not just in the manifesto of PH, but in Barisan Nasional manifesto, I think, of course, the government will agree upon to appoint the key institutions. key institutions like Election Commission need to vet through Parliament, at least through PSSC or standing committee in the Parliament. But as of now, we don't see any concrete action that want to be taken by the government, especially on this reform, electoral reform. And bear in mind, when we talk about electoral reform, it is not just about next GE. We will have soon, several elections come up. For example, next year we'll have Sabah election, followed by Sarawak election, and also Malacca and Johor. So I can say almost every year we will have this democratic festival election.
Right.
So that's why it's very crucial for the government to implement reform.
I understand the concern and the fact that you have been pushing for electoral reform since the inception of Bersih. Was it 17, 18 years ago, right?
Yes,
but
17.
This government has been in power for, was it 18 months now? Nowhere near the halfway mark of a full 5-year term. So when you say slow pace of reforms, slow by which benchmark? And what are we expecting to see realistically at this point in terms of governance, Aira?
Yeah, maybe I can share a bit about, about this, specifically this issue of when we say fast or when we say slow. What do we mean by that? Or like, what's the what does success look like, right? So I think it's important to bear in mind that when the government commits to a specific type of reform or a specific type of you need to change a certain law or amend a constitution, for example, what they mean usually is that a committee will be formed, right? A jawatan kuasa will be formed, and there will be a minister or a minister department that's in charge of this specific reform. I can give you an example, which is the separation of the Attorney General and Public Prosecutor. Where Datuk Sri Azalina has gone on the news to the media saying that there is a committee that's being formed, and here are the steps that we're going to take. And I was involved in one of the meetings that was held on this AG reform. So that's an example of, of course that change is not going to happen tomorrow because the committee will need time to deliberate and take into account many opinions, and of course bipartisanship is also needed. But it's a start, right?
Okay. So this is what we're not saying.
This is what we are not seeing with electoral reform. There has been no indication that, okay, we're going to form a committee at least, right? So this is, I think, the concern of Bersih and all the other endorsing NGOs. Why is there not even that first steps not being taken?
Got it. How would you describe Bersih's relationship with this current Madani government? I mean, I'm wondering because, as a pro-reform NGO or CSO, you are pushing for certain changes that maybe be uncomfortable to the government of the day. I'm curious to know how you approach that and how it might have evolved with the different governments, with how it might have evolved with the different styles of governments of the day. Faisal?
Yeah, we cannot deny the fact that the current political scenario is relatively different with prior to GE 2018.
Because there are some friends in government now who were previously opposition leaders, who were previously activists themselves, reformists themselves. So how would you deal with that? Yeah,
that's the reason why I think, of course, we appreciate the open door, channels that being given to Bersih. Even in fact, we were called by Prime Minister to meet him, and then we submitted the memorandum to him. And it sent the signals or set the tones that Bersih is not enemy to the current government. So that's the reason why we managed to meet other ministers, backbenchers as well, and also opposition MPs as well. So basically, for me, when we talk about reform, our main priority is to materialize the reform. So that's why we go for both ways. First, cooperative. Partner in nation building. We are ready to participate in dialogue, even through caucus of Parliament, APPG, MP, SSC, whatever channels that government have right now, to help to assist the government to implement this reform. Okay. But at the same time, bear in mind, Bersih always being a people movement, we will not hesitate to call for protest or to be confrontational, table banging or whatsoever, if there is no implementation of the reform agenda. Okay, by the
is that a difficult balance? You say creating that relationship, working together, cooperating with the government to help them along with the reforms that you want to see materialize, but at the same time you have to be on edge and be able to hold them accountable, to confront them when they're not, keeping their word. How do you balance the cooperation and the confrontation aspect of it? Bersih's perspective, for example.
Yeah, I think if they are sincere to bring the reform or to bring the change, they will understand the position of Bersih. Because actually, like what I said, actually our main agenda is to materialize the reform agenda. So, table banging or cooperative, it is just a ways to ensure that this will be, taken into place. And that's the reason why, politicians especially, or member of politicians, they should not see Bersih as, through black and white fabric, either you are against us or you are with us. Because at the end of the day, we are, we are friends, not only with the government, but also we try to be a friend with the opposition leader, opposition MP as well. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about reform, we don't want opposition to be the pushback of the reform agenda as well. So we want to be a friend to all, so long as they can help us, to bring the reform forward.
Aira, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question because it also speaks to the role of civil society as a whole, right? Because I completely agree with Faisal that the last thing Bersih wants is to look like an enemy or a stumbling block to what the government wants to do, or to the reforms that we have called for. And I think it's important to realize, I think post 2018, when we ended one-party rule and now we are in a multi-party democracy somewhat, still long way to go, maturing. But I think we need to realize that the sort of a sense have shifted, right, in both, not just within the political parties, but in civil society as well. So previously, I think pre-2018, pre-2008 also maybe, there was just not much channel actually for civil society to even interact with government. So the only way to sort of get the government's attention is you need to go down to the streets, and you need to do that table banging, and you need to have almost a purely confrontational approach. Like, I'm not going to be friends with you, I'm just going to keep demanding and be confrontational because that's what was needed at the time. But I think after 2018, the landscape has changed. In a good way. So Parliament has opened up. Civil society now has avenues such as the APPGMs, the Parliamentary Select Committees, where we have Bersih and many other CSOs have been invited to participate and give our opinions, and sometimes we are taken seriously, sometimes. So I think it's important for Bersih, for CSOs, to understand how to use these different channels strategically when is necessary. And it is also on the politicians to understand that Bersih and other CSOs will use these different tools according to when we find it useful.
Okay, can you give me an example of how you find that strategies need to change when working with these different sets of circumstances? What have you found to be the most effective way to advocate for reforms or the changes that Bersih and its endorsing NGOs want to see at that level of government? What have you seen?
So this is not always easy, right? There's always a constant negotiation, a constant thinking and rethinking of what strategies we should use. So I think the method of going to the streets, of demanding for change in a more confrontational way, that's useful to draw attention to an issue, right? So when there's always strength in numbers, so when the media covers a crowd in front of Parliament demonstrating or like demanding something or submitting a referendum on something, I think that draws attention to the issue. Then people will be like, oh, whoa, okay, what is Bersih doing? What are they demanding for now? So, but what's the follow-up to that? So I think the follow-up to that is when you use the tools that are available to us now, which is Parliament, going through MPs and ministers that you mentioned, were former civil society activists themselves. So I think a combination of both. And I think the confrontational way is important to, is that spark to draw attention, and the follow-up to that is not necessarily like everyone who participated in the demonstration is going to now use the post-demonstration strategy, because then it becomes smaller, right? The sort of the group that participates in that becomes smaller. So I think getting those the two strategies right, I think is
this is a very nuanced approach to civil society advocacy, and I just want to get a sense from the both of you what you think public opinion is towards Bersih. How would you describe, how majority of Malaysians view Bersih? Do you think that Bersih as a movement still enjoys the confidence and the support among Malaysians, Faisal?
Yeah, actually there are, certain information that being distorted, especially perhaps by certain politicians who are anti-Bersih, when they always, tainted Bersih as pro-PH. We remain silent when there is a case against PH, but it is not the case. If I can share, for example, on DNA issue in 2018 during Tun Mahathir, during PH time, when DNA was given to Lim Guan Eng, Bersih, we vehemently criticise this DNA. So that means we are speaking up, on behalf of the people, not on behalf of the politicians. But still, still there are, perception from the public say that we are pro-government, and some expected us more to do more. For example, like in KKB, opposition party always, tweet Bersih, tag Bersih. Where is Bersih?
Yeah.
Actually, we issued a statement. Even in fact, for example, when Ngan Koming, announced certain allocation and so on, it was just 1 hour after the announcement, and then they started attack Bersih. Where's your statement? Just 1 hour after. So, but at the end of the day, we issued a statement within 24 hours. But again, they play with the game, say that, see, after we criticize Bersih, then Bersih issued a statement.
They feed on that, that sentiment.
But as I said, for the sake of reform agenda, we don't care about that.
Okay.
But
so categorically deny that you are pro, you are non-partisan, deny that you are pro-PH in any way, that you are in fact non-partisan.
Yes, even our action speaks for itself. You can go through our social media statements, or we criticize the government. We used to lodge police report against this current government during Johor by-elections. So there are a lot of things that we have done. We speak on behalf of the people, but still, I think this one part, and then I think the important part, because people lose hope for, this current government, especially in terms of implementing the reform agenda. So maybe perhaps they see Bersih is no longer relevant, because whatever we put forward will not be materialized by this current government. So maybe they think that Bersih is no longer relevant.
Right. Aira, how do you respond to that? How would you dispel that perception that Bersih is no longer relevant?
Well, I think if you look at the area of reforms that Bersih works on, of course, the main one is electoral reforms, and then, a whole slew of, like everything from AG separation, political financing, CDF, and all these kinds of reforms. Actually, not many groups in Malaysia work on those. I would say Bersih, IDEAS, TI, C4, maybe. So it's actually, if Bersih doesn't exist, then I believe that these issues will not gain any traction at all in the public, nor with the politicians. So I think Bersih's role is absolutely crucial in this time when Malaysia is moving towards a genuine multi-party democracy, where we want to see reforms being in place, because we know that the next election will not guarantee the same government. It's not going to guarantee the same parties even who are going to come into coalition together. So I think, if we go back to why we keep saying that the reform agenda is slow and we want it to move faster, is precisely because of the political climate right now, where everyone knows it's getting more uncertain. The instability with younger voters coming into play, it's so unpredictable, and who knows who's going to be ruling Malaysia after the next election. So that's why we need to get those reforms done now, so that whoever comes in next, you are also bound to the same rules. Right. Yes. So I think this is really important, and I think this is what needs to be emphasized. It's not speed for speed's sake.
Okay, all right. So this is what the Congress is about, really, to kind of bring this back to the forefront, to the front of people's attention, right? This is going to be your first Congress as chairperson. I do want to ask you, Faisal, what your kind of vision is. You know, you've been given you've taken on the mantle to lead Bersih. Where do you see Bersih heading from this point on?
Okay, actually, this kind of Congress is the first Congress in history, because previously we just organized Congress, I mean so-called Congress down the street lah. I mean the protest. Actually, right after the Congress, what we are going to do, of course, we need to build the consensus. And then, if I may share as well, the importance of Congress. It's not just public-facing program. I mean, we invited the key speakers like Dato' Ambega, Fahmi, Dato' Hussam, and so on.
It's a fantastic lineup, I have to say. Yeah.
But also, we have this agenda of tabling the motions. So, meaning to say, we open up to all NGOs, not only Bersih NGO and NOC NGO, but all other NGOs as well, even from people of disabilities, even from think tank, orang asli and so on, student group, mahasiswa. They can come and they submit the motion, and then one jawatankuasa, separate from SC, they will wait through all the motions. Sometimes they combine the motions if redundant. So yet now we have around 20+ motions, and not just that, the motions will be debated, and all individuals who come can participate in a debate. So individually, you can come, walk in, and you can participate in a debate to debate the motion. And more importantly, voting. We will have the voting. In order to pass the resolution, we will open up for the voting. And as I said as well, this, a principle of one man, one vote, one value applies.
Yeah. So this is democracy in action at the Bersih Congress. Okay.
Yeah. If you come walk in, you can vote to pass the resolution. I mean, to pass the motion to be declaration. So what we want to do from the Congress, we want to build up the consensus. As I said, we share the same spirit, we share the same concern about the reform agenda. It's not just about Bersih, but it is about the the demands from the public at large who want to bring the reform forward. Okay. And moving forward, we will have this post-Congress meeting, and we will see, what we can go in terms of priorities, the strategic partners and so on, right from now heading towards the GE.
Okay. Well, I'm curious, Aira, with the endorsing NGOs that you'll have this opportunity to kind of convene and check back in with each other. What do you consider the biggest threat to civil society organizations today?
Okay, that's not an easy question to answer. I think the nature of civil society work in Malaysia could be a threat to...
the nature of the work itself.
Just the nature of the work. Why do I say that, right? So, in Malaysia, we don't have sort of a very strong philanthropic culture, right? Where you have millionaires, billionaires creating funds and foundations which then funds civil society, NGOs, non-profits, like in the US, for example. We don't have that model. So sustainability of civil society in itself is already a big challenge. So CSOs in Malaysia, a lot of CSOs in Malaysia rely on foreign funding, on individual contributions, on fundraising activities that are not always sustainable and are subject to a lot of factors, right? So I think this is actually one of the main threats, really. Just how the industry, the civil society industry, is structured and function and is funded. Right. So and like in any other industry, you need to attract and retain talent. So you need to have really bright young minds come in who want to work in civil society, want to work in activism, but many hesitate, or many come in and then leave just after a few years because they realize that sustainability is an issue, and because funding can be an issue, so not many CSOs can hire a lot of staff. Right. So a lot of staff tend to be overworked, and some areas of CSO work can also be quite traumatic, as you can imagine, and this burns people out. So I think this is that's the sort of the sustainability issue, and secondly, I think I wouldn't want to say political instability, but I think fragmentation is also a challenge. So this is what I've seen, you know, especially after 2022, when, as we mentioned earlier, right, a lot of our friends, our partners in civil society started to get a bit confused. Like, so do we support this government? Do we continue criticizing them? How do we work with them? And yeah, there are groups that disagree very strongly with each other on how to approach that. So I think that fragmentation is something that we are seeing, and something that our Congress also is trying to play a part in resolving.
Yeah, which is wonderful. This is an opportunity for everyone to get together and kind of talk things out. So Faisal, for the people who are watching today who are passionate about the reform agenda, members of the public who are passionate about the reform agenda but also want to support civil society organizations, understand the important work that they do, may not be able to help with the structural challenges they face, but want to show support, how can they do that? How can they become more actively involved with the Bersih Congress?
Okay, first, of course, if they go through the, Bersih social media, they can just register through our link, but they also can walk in, they can participate in the Bersih Congress. And just related to your question about the threat of civil society, I think it is very important to address the issue of regeneration of the civil society. Because, you know, sometimes we forget the importance of, you know, recruiting the new activists, young activists from the student movement and so on. And this this Bersih Congress, we will launch this Perkumpulan Aktivis Bersih, which aim to go to the grassroots, to the campus, and then to have more recruitment of the young activists and then young leaders of civil society organizations. So anyone can join, even if you are students, if you are young people, if you are eager for the reform, you can join us and be with us through this Aktivis Bersih, Perkumpulan Aktivis Bersih, and we can join hand in hand, to bring the change.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being on the show, and thank you also for the important work that you both do. Thank you. That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.